Welcome to another Martial Moment. So today I have my friend Leah, who has done fencing, and now I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, well, this is a martial arts channel. Why are we talking about fencing? And I'm going to give you my argument about that right now, because I don't think that you have to do something Asian to do martial arts. I think anything that has kind of the martial spirit, the tradition, and really anything that's a sport intended to simulate war or simulate fighting falls under martial arts. And so that is why we are going to be talking about fencing today. And that's also why I'll have later episodes about boxing, wrestling, things like that. Because even though someone might not wear a belt or speak Japanese in the martial art, that does not mean that it's not a martial art, I guess. And you look through all the history of Europe, and yeah, they don't have like the punching, kicking type styles a lot of the time, but you see a lot of sword fighting, and that just happened to be culturally what made sense as a martial art in those places. So anyway, what's up? How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, and happy we're finally getting together to do this, because I had been meaning to ask you for a while, and then I forgot to post things for a long time, so I'm glad that it worked out.
Yeah, me too. I'm really excited to talk about fencing again. It was fun to actually get thinking about fencing again, because I've been wanting to get into it again. But
yeah, I'd love to go try out fencing once. I don't think I'd have the patience to start up a whole new sport right now, because that takes a lot of time and commitment that I don't have. Mm-hmm. But it'd be cool to try, and I've started watching a little bit just to kind of get a feel for it, and it's really cool. Leah was telling me that she doesn't really like to watch competitive fencing anymore because she did it for so long.
I did it for so long, so many years, and we traveled around the U.S., all these different states, because my brother did a bunch of competitive fencing, so.
Yeah, so that's understandable. It's understandable not wanting to watch the same sport all the time. But I guess maybe now that you've had a break, maybe you'd like it a bit more.
Yeah, probably. It would be nostalgic and bring back memories.
All right. So, some of the questions I have for you. So, when did you start fencing?
Okay, so quite a long time ago, actually. I started, I think I was about 8 years old. And my brother was fencing before me. So that was I got to see him fence, and I was about 8, and they were well, you have to be 10 to start, and I was darn. And
wait, I'm not going to give a pointy object to somebody under 8.
The club we were at, they didn't, it was the age limit, or the minimum. So I was well, this sucks, and then I talked to the coach, and she was well, you seem mildly intelligent, let's give you a pointy object. And that's how it started. Yeah,
I guess going along with such a young age. So I teach stage combat to students of lots of different ages, and at one point I did try to teach kids starting at age 9, and that was hard, and I don't ever want to do that again.
So you see why it was 10?
For the same reason, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's smart, and I get it, but I was, begging everyone. I was I have to start.
So, how long, then, did you do it? Because I know you haven't been doing it recently, but how long, approximately, did you train?
I think, I was trying to do the math in my head. I think I've been doing it had been doing it. Best tense. I'd been doing it for, 5 years after I started, and I was wait, is that right? Yes. Because it was about 12 or 13 when I stopped. But that was because of everything all happened at once, and we couldn't afford it anymore, and it's a very expensive sport. And
oh yeah, it is. That's kind of one of the big reasons why I haven't done it yet. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of equipment that I can't afford.
Yeah.
So what is your experience level, I guess? If you could, I don't know how they determine that in fencing, but if you would say if you're beginner, intermediate, advanced, that kind of thing, where would you put yourself?
Okay, well, back then, in my prime time, I would say that was about...
Your prime of 13.
Yes. I would say it was about intermediate, because I was competing a little bit, and Like, I wasn't at the beginner level anymore. But I wouldn't say I was up there. My brother was definitely up there. He was pretty good, but yeah.
Was he? I'm guessing he was very competitive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, super competitive. Did a ton of competitions. Like I said, all around the U.S. He did so many competitions. And yeah, so he was more competitive than I was, and he was also older than I was, so that made more sense.
I'm gonna apologize to my audience. My dog will not leave the room, and he's whining at me for something. So if you hear that noise, that's my dog.
Just picture a very cute dog that really wants to come in the room.
He's just staring at me. I don't know what he wants.
So cute.
I tried to get him to go upstairs, but that did not happen, so he is here. Anyway, so how would you describe fencing to somebody who knows nothing about it? And I know most people have seen fencing in movies or in TV, somewhere like that, but I don't think many people have actually watched fencing or become acquainted with what it really is besides just poking somebody with a sharp stick.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, if you break it down, it is poking somebody with a sharp stick. That's not actually that sharp. But it's, I don't know, it's a point-based sport, like most, I would assume.
Yes.
Where, yeah.
It's not a fight to the death. It's a point-based system.
No, yeah, and it's only usually two fencers who fence with swords that usually are electrical. And I'm trying to break this down as simple as possible. And it's, for the different styles of fencing, it's different, but usually it's different kinds of touches on the other fencer's body give you the point.
All right. Simple enough.
Was that a
a
good explanation?
So what factors convinced you to start fencing? Kind of, I guess, what is your story besides watching your brother do fencing? What really made you want to start?
That's a really good question. It's also, okay, so if you have ever watched fencing, it's super cool. Like, it's amazing. It's fun, so much fun to watch. And then with, like, all the gear and stuff, they just look super cool. So, that was a very big thing, was I want to be cool. Do remember I was 8 years old. And I also noticed there wasn't very many girls at the club, and I was like, well, I want to be one of those girls. And so that's kind of what started it.
I'm going to say it is pretty legitimate to use the uniform as a reason. I will confess the reason why I got into martial arts in the first place was to wear fancy pajamas.
Oh!
Like, no. At first, because I was so young when I learned about martial arts that I was just like, I don't even care if I'm any good. I just want to wear fancy pajamas. And then I actually did want to be good. So yeah. I guess your priorities change after you grow up.
Totally. Well, and I found you could totally wear awesome socks in fencing. And my brother never took this opportunity, so I was like, I have to take that opportunity.
Also, I mean, if you like Star Wars, I mean, you kind of look like a Sith.
But
their masks, I mean, not a lot of sports let you wear a fancy mask. Mm-hmm. But that one does. So if you want to look like a Sith, and you want to do a sport that lets you poke people with a sword, then fencing might be a good choice for you.
Yes.
Just gonna say that.
Just leave it there.
So, comparing a lot of martial arts and combat type sports where they have competition focused on a square mat, mm-hmm. or recently in Taekwondo, I know they've switched to it's either like a hexagon or an octagon shaped mat, and then you have MMA and a cage. But fencing is very unique in that it's on a strip. Mm-hmm. So how does that change the mechanics of the sport when you don't have such a wide area?
Okay, well, it kind of regulates it in a way, to where you can't just go anywhere around the room. I think I like that it's in a strip, because if you didn't have that strip, you would be moving everywhere. And it would turn into more like swashbuckling and more like
which would be
combat.
Cool. That'd be cool.
It would be cool, but no. But that's when like footwork and stuff like that comes in, because it's strategy pushing, like, because you can only go forward and backward.
Yeah. Yeah, you can't circle, and I guess it does kind of take away the option to just kind of chase each other around the mat.
Yeah.
Because you can really only go two directions, and then it kind of forces you into either an attacking stance or a defensive stance, depending on which way you're going with who's controlling.
Who's controlling, yeah, like what strategy you're most lenient to. And yeah, you're right. You can definitely, like, if you push somebody to the end of the mat, like or to the end of the strip, not the mat. Sorry, I'm getting sports confused. It changes the sport a little bit because it adds in that skill, it adds in that tactic, it adds in, like, how you want to overcome your opponent.
Yep. Yeah, and it forces you to engage, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, that was always the hardest part of, like, fencing is, like, I could literally run to, I could back up into my little corner and have you come and chase me. Like,
either way, you're going to have to face down your opponent.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that mentality is not as... it's not as difficult to get to that mentality when you're highly competitive and you want to win. But when you're new and you're kind of hesitating and don't know what to do, it forces you to try something.
Yeah.
Because I know this can kind of become a crutch in, like, jiu-jitsu, where if we're holding guard, I can sit there the whole match. While it's not ideal by any means,
Right.
You at least have the ability to just not try stuff, and that's something that can be hard to push through when you're brand new. But in something that forces you to try things, it forces you to get better, even though it's really uncomfortable.
Yes. No, I could imagine for you it would be more uncomfortable, but that is, like, my comfort zone, is only being able to move forward or backward.
Yeah, and this is why I think it's so important to create a dialogue between different styles, because everyone's different, and someone's comfort zone might not be my comfort zone. And yeah, I have my preference in my fighting style, but by no means does that indicate that's superior to anything else or that you shouldn't do something else. Because, I mean, there are plenty of reasons why you do fencing over jiu-jitsu, and that's fine.
Yeah.
Like, you're allowed to do that, and I don't want to discourage anybody. So kind of give them options of what they can choose and what sounds fun to them. Like looking like a Sith. That's fun.
Yes, it is.
So, earlier you had mentioned different fencing styles. So I know there are 3 of them. Would you like to share with our audience what those are?
Yeah, so there's 3, like, main different fencing styles. There's épée, foil, and saber. And all those 3 are very similar, but have their differences. I fenced épée mostly, only because that's what my club did. There really wasn't any reason for it, but also, in my opinion, it's the best to start out in, because there's, like, once you get into foil and saber, there's more rules, or there's not necessarily more rules, but different kind of skill. Because with épée, it's the whole body is your target. The sword is a little different. You've got a bell guard that protects your hand. It's more of a, like, solid surface. And that's about it. You can hit from the head to the toe. Anything counts in épée. Then when you go to foil, you've got a little different. It's only the chest. And you wear, like, a special, like, vest that's made out of, like, different kinds of metals to make that contact with the sword. And the sword is a little different because the bell guard is smaller. Do you You look like you're about to say something.
Oh, no. I'm just thinking of and we'll get to this in a little bit. But, like, each fencing style, like, tends to have their own personality associated with it, and we'll get into that in a little bit.
It totally does.
Talked about saber.
Yes. So saber is the last one, and it's very similar where you only have, I think you have the head is included in saber. Saber's the one I'm, like, least familiar with because nobody ever does it except for a few people. But the sword makes contact with, like, multiple points. Like, it has
it's
to hit
more
the
of
side.
it's more of a cut than a thrust
Than a poke
type
yeah.
motion. Yeah, it's interesting that you say epee is easier to start with because I've heard from most people that they say you normally start on foil.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
So I don't know.
I'm biased. Epee is my jam.
Yeah. So with these three styles, it's not like let's say karate, where karate has lots of different styles, but each school kind of only does one style. In fencing, a lot of competitions, like they'll have all the styles, and you pick your style. It's like your division, almost. So depending on what your school does, your school might do all three. Your school might do only one of the styles, but it's very common for people to have trained in multiples at some point.
Yeah. Especially as you like progress in your fencing career, I would say. Like I know a lot of people who like try out the different styles.
Yep. Yeah, because we can go back to the whole personality thing. There is kind of a personality that I've seen for each fencing style. I have a friend who, he didn't train for too long in fencing, but from talking with him, it seems like saber is kind of almost the bro style. I want to say.
It totally
They're like,
is.
oh, my sword's bigger, and like...
I look cooler because I'm slashing instead of poking.
Yeah, like, it seems like they feel more aggressive. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of the vibe I get from saber fencers. And even this friend, he was saying, yeah, I started off in foil, but I just really wanted to go to saber. Like, I really wanted my coach to tell me I could go do saber.
Yeah. No, the one kid at our club who did saber was very much that way. He was very, like, aggressive in his fencing style, and you have to be with saber. Mm-hmm. Like, there's no defense, really, in saber. It's, okay, we're... even if you, like, watch their bouts, because each, like, how would you explain that? A bout is, like, two fighters fighting until you get the amount of points that are set by whatever competition.
It's like, yeah, it's basically a match, right?
Yes.
It's just their word for it.
Yes.
Because they're fancy in French and they have to say everything different.
Exactly. No, seriously, though.
Yeah.
But in each, like... What was I saying about this, though?
On each bout, how aggressive they are.
Yes, they're usually...
saber.
They don't last very long. Like, in epee and foil, you can kind of see them more strategizing, more waiting out for, like, a time to, like, get in there and get a point. But with saber, it's just, whap! Okay, who got the point? Okay, me. Okay, let's start again. And, like, it's, like, seriously, that's how they go, and so it's a lot more fast-paced. Mm-hmm. And like I said, there's, like, the skill, and I keep hitting the table, I'm sorry. I'm like, my hands! But it's, I don't know, it's different skills. But the reason I say you should start out with epee is because it's less to think about in my mind. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's just because I started out with epee, but you don't have to worry about where you're going to hit the opponent.
Yeah.
And the epee is actually a lot more heavier than the foil, so you build up those muscles in your arms, because sometimes bouts last forever, and you're dying.
I've seen, like, a lot of epee bouts will go for, like, 9 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you can't let your guard down, so you can't pull your arm in. So your arm's out there with this...
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So then what's the personality for, say, epee? I know you're biased, so we'll just go straight to the epee.
Biased. No, I don't know if epee really has a character about it, only because I've seen everyone do it, so it's just
okay.
like...
Yeah, that would make sense. How about foil, then? You've seen anyone do foil?
Yes, I have. A few people. I don't know. I feel like foil is that more, like, hoity-toity. We're going to be more fancy about it.
I would agree with that.
Yeah, it is. It's more delicate, I feel like.
Well, the sword's lighter, so you can do all that fancy stuff, and your reaction time's going to be a lot better, just because the weight isn't a hindrance.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah.
And you're only targeting a few parts of the body, so it's not like you have to go, like, down and then up a whole lot. It's very much in kind of one plane, almost.
Yeah.
As opposed to epee.
Yeah, because epee, I'm trying to remember. Epee is everywhere, so it's even your mask, like, getting hit in the face with an epee. I'm sorry, I
Ouch.
keep hitting the table. No, it's awful because it scratches, like you've got like a mesh in front of your face. And so if you get hit with it, it like throws you back and it makes this awful sound and your ears are like a little deaf from it after. That's fun. But foil, it's just like the upper body. So the upper body and like the stomach. And then with saber, it's the arms.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. That's the thing about saber is it's like a whole upper.
Which makes it a lot faster then, because you can go to the outside. You can.
Yeah.
It's not just straight to the center, like foil.
Yeah.
Cool. So, if someone was going to choose, obviously, I'm sure you would recommend trying different styles first, except for saber.
Except for saber.
I'm feeling a bias against saber here.
Well, it's just one of those more like when you start out with fencing, yes, you do get bruises and you get things like that because like you have a certain amount of armor, like you're good.
But it's not much.
It's not much. No, not when you're going up against my brother.
Ouch.
It was never enough. But sorry. But saber's more like you get whiplash. Like you get whiplash. That's not the right word, but like you get welts.
Yeah,
because it's more aggressive, and the sword is like hitting more part of like a more surface area of your body. And
so apart from like just trying all the styles out and seeing what works for you, what kind of factors play into what style you would choose? Like what body types or experience levels or just kind of technique would play a difference?
Yeah, so I think, I don't know, fencing is really cool because I've seen all body types do it and do it well, which I think is really cool. And I think that's for a lot of sports in general, but fencing especially. Like, I've seen, like, all kinds of ages as well. Like, competitions are cool that way. But I would say you just kind of have to get into it and see what you like. Because all the different styles are very different. And, yes, there's similarities, but it's what you more swing to. Like, I enjoy epee more because you have more surface area. So you have more surface area, you have more target. And so you can hit their glove behind the bell guard, like you can get their hands, like you can get their arms.
That is impressive if you can do that.
It's, yeah, no,
I feel like you're not aiming for that a whole lot.
No, you look for the very wrinkly gloves so you can get a hole. Anyways. But yeah, so I like that because you have to think about everything. And it's not just that one area. That's just what I like. But also, that's what I've grown up doing. So I think if you are interested in fencing, you should definitely check out one of them at, like, a time. And see if you even like fencing. Because if you don't like fencing, you're probably not going to like the other styles.
That is a valid point. If you don't like fencing, you probably won't like fencing.
You probably won't like fencing if you don't like fencing. Try roofing. But
Wow, we went there. I was like, we're not gonna make a garden joke. We're not gonna make we made it. Okay, we're
I'm
done.
sorry, I had to. Only because I'm like, yeah, no, I used to do fencing when I was, like, younger. And people are like, you put up fences when you were younger? And I'm like, no. Actually, I did not.
Who wants to do that in their free time?
No one. Unless you're getting paid for that. Then go you. You be a fencer. But in my opinion, try fencing any of the styles. And if you like it, then continue. And try the other styles. Or stick with what you like.
All right. So, shifting a little bit to competitive fencing. Let's say someone wants to do fencing and they have the intention of competing a lot, maybe even going to the Olympics someday. What kind of training outside of fencing class do you need in order to really be good? Like, what kind of conditioning type things would you recommend doing?
Well, if you're interested in competition, you really want to focus on like a lot of
fencing.
Yeah. If you're going to compete in fencing, you're gonna want to practice fencing. But also cardio is really good. Just because a lot of fencing bouts last a very long time, and if you're like, you have to have that stamina to be able to stay in one place or be moving constantly and no one getting a point, no one getting like any rest. That's really important because the thing is with fencing, if somebody's stronger than you in that aspect, they can wait you out and then you get weak and then they get a point.
Ooh, that's good to know.
Yeah, it is good to know.
It's really good to know.
So you don't ever want to be to that point. You want to be like really strong in that aspect to where you don't get tired when your arm is out there forever.
So maybe some shoulder conditioning, a lot of arm conditioning.
Yes, and just the one arm, because you're not going to use the other. The other one stays behind you the whole time.
And you probably need some good leg conditioning too, right, for your footwork.
Yep, exactly. That's exactly what I was just about to say. Because in fencing, like the proper stance and everything is very low, and you stay very low the whole time. And so lots of leg conditioning, as you say.
Probably do some squats.
Yes.
Lunges, especially the lunges. If you're thinking of movements that you use a lot.
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet lunges is one of those.
Yeah, and good footwork is always really important because if you slip up with that, then your toe's in the way and you're gonna get your hit. You're gonna get your hit toed.
We can speak English.
Yes, I'm really good at it. But yeah, so legs and definitely arms. Those are things you should definitely be strong in and work on. Why are you laughing at me?
I'm just thinking about how painful that would be to be stuck in a bout for a long time, not being able to put your arm down or even bring it back towards your body. That sounds really intense.
Yeah, no, it is, and that's why I love fencing, was because I had really strong legs, and that, I miss that now. Like, running and everything was easy, but yeah, no, fencing, I love it. No, I want to go do it again.
All right, so for competitions, just a normal amateur competition, what's it like? What's your typical day like at a competition?
Okay, so usually, they set it up into pools. So you usually have, because it's only 2 people in a bout. And so you have, like, everyone is in, like, the first round, and then it gets brought down. Whoever wins those bouts moves on, and whoever doesn't.
So it's usually a single elimination. And so.
Yes.
So that can be kind of a bummer if you lose your first one, if you've traveled that far and you lose your first and then you're done.
Yeah. No, it is. And sometimes, usually that's for more amateur, but like when you're going more professional or, more...
Just like more high level competition.
Yeah. They usually have a time where everyone like fences of like a few people, and whatever your points are and wherever you rank depends on where you are in the final or the actual bout, and no one like goes home then.
Okay.
And then it goes into the elimination where if you lose, you are eliminated. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then it just gets brought down to the 2 fencers. But you're right. Some fencing tournaments, if you lose your first, then you just get to go home.
So let's say you're doing really well in your competition day. How many bouts would you have on average? Just not for like a super huge tournament or a super small one, just like the average tournament.
The average, you'd have quite a few. If you were doing really well, you'd have quite a few. Like 5 or 6 maybe.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And if those, I mean, of course they can end sooner or go longer, but those longer ones, if you have 5 or 6 of those 9-minute bouts,
yeah,
that can be really tiring. And again, why you need to really train if you're going to compete, because that's not for just the hobbyist right there.
No, but it's still fun to, like, if it is just your hobby, it is still fun to do competitions because you learn a lot from it. In my experience with competitions, because I did do a few, I learned a lot from other coaches. Like, this one time I had this guy come up to me, and I didn't even know him. He was the other kid's coach, by the way. My opponent's coach came up and was, like, giving me these pointers, and I, like, took that in the rest of my fencing career and used it. And, like, the fencing community is just so cool. But...
No, yeah, it's kind of similar in jiu-jitsu, where even if your opponent, like, even if you had a rough match with your opponent, you're still pretty good friends afterwards.
Yeah, no, you learn a lot from competition. So if it is just your hobby and you are enjoying it, consider doing at least one competition, and see how you like it, because it's a lot of fun. And you might win, so that would be cool.
Yeah, that'd be super cool.
But also with fencing, there's a lot of downtime in between bouts. At least I've noticed, because if you are winning and you keep going, like, you have to wait for other, like, strips to be open.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they have to have specific places open for you to continue in the competition. So, does that make sense? There's lots of downtime. So it's good in that aspect, because if you do have a really long bout, then you have, like, a bit of time to rest and recuperate.
That's good. It's good to have. So, in contrast, so we just talked about kind of the average competition.
Mm-hmm.
How is it different for, like, Olympic fencing, or is there a difference?
I would say they're pretty similar. But like I said, there's like a pool before, usually in the bigger competitions where everyone kind of fences and they kind of stack you up. So there's that, but there's also usually at bigger competitions, there's a lot more people. Like, they get huge, and like, there's like booths and everything. Have you ever been to like a big competition? I don't know, like...
Yeah, I haven't been to any fencing ones, but...
Yeah, they're cool, because usually lots of people, like, fencing companies will come and they'll, like, set up booths and you can buy, like, their equipment and stuff like that, which I think is really cool. But
you can probably see a lot of the stuff that's just coming to market, too.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah.
stuff that's just getting approved for whatever. And probably a lot of people saying, oh, this is going to be used in the Olympics, and stuff trying to get you to pay a lot of money.
Yeah, there's that. But also it's really nice to have those, like, things on the outskirts, because if my epes don't work, I can go buy a new one.
Yeah.
Like, or I can go take it to be fixed. But yeah, there's usually a lot more people, and that's usually when you start seeing the different age groups and, like, the different, because I've seen some old men fence amazingly, and it's so much fun to watch them because they get so grumpy at each other.
I'm gonna look this up.
You need to.
Old man fencing.
But the age groups they're pretty endless, and it's, I don't know, it's cool.
So what are the divisions then? How do they split people up?
Usually it's age. I know for lots of other martial arts it's more weight class, right? Yeah, fencing is more age.
Do they have any skill divisions or just age divisions?
I'm almost positive they do have some skill divisions, but it's really hard to tell somebody's skill.
Yeah.
Unless you have, like, lots of competitions under your belt that they can see.
Yeah. Yeah, I know for us sometimes, like, there's some tournaments that will do it based on time. So I wasn't sure if there were any that did it like that.
Based on time?
Like, how long you've been training. Like, you've been training, like, under a year versus, like, over a year.
Yeah, no, I don't think fencing does it that way. I was like, what is this time you speak of? But yeah, no, I don't think fencing does it like that. I mean, it's probably changed since I've fenced.
Yeah, so we talked a lot about age, and now I'm going to watch grumpy old man fencing.
Yes.
So, along with competition, how long does it typically take for you to be, like, proficient in fencing? Like, is there a certain time frame where you kind of stop really being a beginner and really start being able to hold your own?
I would say it definitely will depend on the person. Because I know that definitely I keep saying definitely.
Some people are slower, some people are faster.
It depends on your learning ability, and how fast you pick up, like, the footwork and the different movements that you have to get down before you can really start getting into strategy. So I'd say it would take about, like, maybe a year or 2 years to become less than a beginner. But it also depends on your age. That's another thing.
True.
If you're going into it and you're not under the age of 10, you might excel a little faster. Just because you're going to be stronger in it as well. So, yeah, it definitely depends on the person, but I'd say about 1 to 2 years.
Okay, so if someone wants to become really, really good at fencing, not necessarily, like, Olympic level competitor, but let's say they want to be a committed hobbyist, how many days per week should they train?
A committed hobbyist, I'd probably say like twice a week. Yeah, I don't
Just to give people an idea, because I know some people might be like, oh, well, it'll only take me like a year or two to be good. But then if you're only training like once a month, then you're probably not going to progress as fast.
No.
Compared to, let's say, someone trained like 5 to 6 times a week, they're probably going to progress a
Way
lot
faster.
faster.
Yeah.
Apart from burnout, which that person might be susceptible to. But so it's good for people to figure out a balance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, don't burn yourself out if you're going to train, but definitely do it more than once a month.
Yeah, definitely. Like, at the least, I'd say once a week. Just because I think that's, like, a good amount of time to have in between to recover, like, your muscles and everything. Especially when you're first starting out. You're going to be using a lot more muscles than you're probably used to.
Yeah.
And so at least once a week. But if you're really committed to it, twice a week.
All right. So shifting again, kind of back to you and your experience. So what was your favorite part about fencing in general?
I really enjoyed the footwork. I think we've talked about this before. I really enjoyed the footwork. Only because...
She loves the footwork.
I love the footwork so much! And I perfected it, and it was beautiful, and... I think that also becomes a part of my dancing background, like, because I danced a lot when I was younger, and so footwork and movement and things like that were a lot easier for me.
Yeah.
And so that was my favorite part, but also bedazzling my helmet.
Yeah, that's something you can't do in a lot of... You can't do that in a lot of martial arts. Mm-mm. So if you want to bedazzle your helmet, you got to do fencing.
Yes. Also, with most competitions, you get stamps on your helmet.
Oh, nice.
And so you'll see, like, competitors or, like, fencers who have, like, their whole helmet is, like, covered in stamps from all these different, like, competitions and stuff. So that's really cool. And that's also a fun part, because then you get to, like, you don't get to do that in a lot of other sports.
Yeah. Sorry about the barking. I don't know who's at my door. What was your least favorite part? Because I know you love fencing, but we all have to admit there's always something that you just dread doing in fencing. So what was that for you?
That for me was probably being so wrapped up in my head. Because you kind of, in fencing, like, you're really, like, you're under a mask, so no one can see your face, really. You can't really see your opponent's face, and you can hear yourself breathing. If that is something you don't like, don't fence.
If you're claustrophobic, maybe not.
Maybe not. Just because it's it's a mask in front of your face. It's mesh, so you can see out of it, and you can breathe just fine, but you can definitely hear yourself breathe. So if you're claustrophobic, probably not a good thing. But I always got wrapped up in my head, and told myself that I couldn't do it, and when I did that, I couldn't do it. So that was my least favorite part about it, was how much control my brain had over my production.
Yeah, and I experienced that a lot, too. And I think a lot of people can relate to that in sports in general. Mm-hmm. Just the feeling of wanting to be the best. And I think it's really hard in individual sports, because at least with a team, like, if you win or lose, like, it's all together. It's not one person. But when it's all on you, that's kind of scary. And people come and watch you, and you're like, I don't want to disappoint these people.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I know I've had a few friends who do trap shooting. Totally different sport. But that sport is really the same, or not the same way, but very similar. In the fact of you miss and you start missing more because you're so wrapped up in your head. And it's just you out there shooting things.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know, trap shooting is when, like, you have, like, a disc fly off into the distance and you shoot it with a shotgun usually. It's a really fun sport. I've done it a few times. Not for me, but it is very similar in that regard, where you get really wrapped up in your head because it's just you.
Yeah.
And you don't have a team sitting there going, yeah, we got this. We can do this. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was my least favorite part about it.
Yeah. So, what is the funniest / weirdest experience that has happened to you or a teammate while doing fencing?
Great question,
You can have
Tori.
multiples, too. It's fine. I just like people's funny stories.
I actually love this question. It's probably my favorite one you've asked me. this one time, my brother, he was bouting, and we were just at practice, and he and his buddy were, like, going, and my brother lunged into his friend, but his friend saw that he was lunging, and so, chest bumped his blade, and broke the blade in two.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Yeah, that was probably the craziest thing that's ever happened. Just because nobody's ever done that before, so we were like...
So, if he chest bumped it, does that mean the other guy got points, or...?
No, I think he did get points from it, but, it was just really because he just went into it, with everything. And that's what... Ooh, it was bad. But it was, because they're strong, they're metal blades.
Yeah.
And he, snapped it right in two.
That is impressive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Since you love this question so much, do you have any other stories? Or?
Because... this is something I realized that I didn't mention, but fencing is an electrical sport. It has to do with a lot of electricity and, different currents and stuff like that. So with... you have a wire that runs from your wrist down to your back left hip, that plugs into everything, but sometimes the boys at our club would, touch two sides of it to their tongue, and it would shock them like a 9-volt battery. And that was interesting.
If you like to electrocute yourself, fencing is for you.
Yeah.
For you. Yeah. Getting a lot of weird reasons to do fencing.
Yes. It's so cool. That's why you should do it. You'd look like a Sith.
And you can electrocute yourself.
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend doing that, but that was just something that was weird. But also, being a girl in the sport, and there not being very many girls, whenever I'd beat the little boys at my, the boys in my same age, whenever I'd beat them, they'd cry.
Did you ever, because I know this is common in jiu-jitsu and wrestling with divisions that have, co-ed. Sometimes when it's a girl versus a guy, the girl feels like she really can't win or really can't be excited about it, because if the guy loses to a girl, then it's weird, but then also, if he beats the girl, it's as if, her win means nothing, almost. The assumption that the guy was going easy on her if she won, or the assumption that, oh, well, she wasn't going to win anyway. Did you ever experience things like that?
I didn't experience it myself, because I was always super excited to win, and I knew I won because I was skilled. But I have seen that in other fencers, just because, I feel like that's everywhere in a lot of sports, that are, like you said, co-ed, and there's both genders in it, and there's... People say there's not stigmas around it, but there are, and there's, things that are unspoken, but they're there. But I have noticed with fencing, it's a lot different in that aspect, because female fencers are just as good as male fencers.
Yeah.
If you're the same skill level, it doesn't matter, you can't be overpowered by your opponent in that sense. I mean, yes, if 8-year-old me went up against my older brother, yes, I was a little overpowered, but I still could beat him because
it's a strategy game more so than a force game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What we're saying.
Because I know a lot of, things like that, or a lot of sports are unfair because, biology is different. Men are stronger in different parts of their, bodies. They've got different, muscles in their arms that they are more...
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But with fencing, it's, it's not about that necessarily.
Yeah.
So I didn't experience it all that much. I said I saw it, but I was confused about what I was talking about. Because I've seen so many strong female fencers, and Olympic female fencers, and women who've gone on to become Olympic fencers, who are just so cool and amazing and super strong and skilled. So... Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does.
I feel like I rambled on.
That question was out of the blue. It was not in my list. So.
I was I don't remember this question.
Yeah. So, what advice would you give to someone who wants to try fencing for the first time?
I don't know. I feel like everyone who tries fencing is just gonna love it, but unless you're claustrophobic. Or walk in thinking that you're going to be putting up fences. It's not.
Yeah, you're not.
You're going to be very disappointed. But
Yeah, is there anything that's more frustrating when you start out that people need to just know that it's going to be hard at first, or kind of...
Yeah, it is going to be hard at first because you don't have those, like, muscles built up yet, but, like, just stick with it. If you really enjoy it at first, and maybe you're, like, frustrated with a few things, know that those things might go away. I know that, like, when I was younger, I was frustrated because I wasn't as strong. Yet. But that always frustrated me. But when I worked harder and I, like, got better, and I worked more towards it, it got better. So if you are frustrated and you are about to start out, know that you just gotta stick to it.
Yeah, don't go into any sport thinking that you know better than anybody else and that you're just gonna win right off the bat, because you're not. That's just how it is. Like, you have to, I think in any sport you start out for the first time, you have to go through a humility phase.
Oh yeah, well, and when you're not winning things, you're learning things. If you win all the time, you're not going to learn anything, you're not going to continue, and then you're going to start losing. Yeah. So, it's okay to lose.
Yeah, if you are in, and this is for any martial art, any sport, if you are constantly training with people who you can just beat into the ground super easily, you probably need new training partners. You probably need to be challenged more, because, I mean, yeah, you can feel great just smashing new people all the time, but at some point you're going to need to compete with people at your own level and people better than you. So don't let it get to your head too much.
No. And that's why I think competition is really a good thing, especially if it's maybe just your hobby, considering going to competition, because you learn a lot from it, like I was saying.
So what should someone expect when doing their first class?
Learning a lot of footwork, learning vocabulary for footwork.
If you've never spoken French, get used to it.
Yeah, pick up a book. No, just kidding. Just kidding. But
if you've ever done ballet, this is one thing that I do know about fencing. If you have done ballet, the terms overlap with fencing, so don't get confused, because you'll use a lot of the same words and they mean totally different things in context.
Yeah. But yeah, no, if you do start out, you're probably just going to learn footwork, and a lot of the vocabulary, because, I mean, it's got really strong French roots, and some competitions are funny that way, where they literally just say, like, the whole competition is in French.
That's weird.
Yes, but it's so cool. Like, at the same time. Like, you look like a Sith and you're speaking French. How cool.
French-speaking Siths. I like it.
Yes. But yeah, it's a lot of fun. And learning all that stuff is important, and it's all part of it.
All right, so last question before we kind of end this podcast. What is the biggest reason you would use to convince somebody to try fencing? Besides being a Sith and speaking French. And electrocuting yourself.
I don't know. I would probably say that it's the coolest sport because it's like a game of chess. It's very, it's skill-based. And you're looking at me like I'm crazy. It's so uncommon. And it's kind of an obscure sport. And for those reasons, I think everyone should try it.
If you're on the fence at all, go watch some fencing. And even if you're not on the fence, go watch some fencing. Because, I mean, it really won't hurt to take 5 minutes out of your day to watch a YouTube video. But It's really cool. It's so dynamic, so fast, and it looks a lot easier than it is. I'm guessing. I haven't done it, but I'm guessing it looks a lot easier than it is, especially at high level where they're leaping all over the place.
Leaping, yes.
I mean, they do that. Not often, but they do it.
No, they do. And there's all... or my favorite is the flush. It's when you literally run like you're in a normal stance, and then you, like, lunge, and then you start running at your opponent.
That sounds fun.
Yes.
I want to do that.
It's more like a demi-lunge into a flush, but that's just a fencing joke.
we have a lot of inside jokes. It's a problem.
Yes.
Anyway.
It's a good problem to have, I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. So, this kind of concludes our segment about fencing. I hope you got some good information out of it. I know I did. Makes me really want to go try fencing now. I cannot afford that. But
But you can still try it without having all the gear.
Good to know. You can still try it without having all the gear. Yeah. So, that's pretty much it. Thank you, Leah, for your time. I hope our viewers will enjoy this and keep listening to more podcasts. I should have more coming out relatively soon. I'm recording a lot now because I know I was bad about not getting things up on my channel. So, that being said, this has been another Marshall Moment. See you in the next one.